Hey, welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, brought to you by CloudSpot, the easiest way to deliver and even sell your photos online. I'm your host, Raymond Hatfield, and I really hope that you are having a wonderful holiday season, because today we have one of my favorite episodes. Each month, I sit down and have a conversation with a fellow member of the Beginner Photography Podcast community. These are photographers and people just like you. Most of them are new to photography and are dealing with those struggles that, you know, most of the other guests that I interview on the show just kind of gloss over. So the goal of these interviews is to show you that whatever you're currently dealing with right now, you're not alone. And there's somebody in your own digital backyard going through the same challenges and can possibly help you out too. Now, all of these photographers that you're about to hear from are active members of the Beginner Photography Podcast community on Facebook, and I'm sure would be more than happy to answer any follow-up questions that you may have. All you have to do is join the Facebook community. If you want to be a part of the most helpful group of photographers on the internet, go ahead and head over to beginnerphotopod.com/group to join now. Just like the last Best of the Year episode, these ones are also jam-packed, so we're going to dive right in. First up, we got Matt Austin. So in this clip, Matt is going to share the process that he went through to learn photography, how he found the limitation of his gear, and also how he found his true passion. It seems like a relatively short timeline into photography. When you watch that Twitch, like what was photography any part of your life before that time, or did you see this and you're just like, maybe I'll give this a shot?
It was one of those, it seems like it would be fun to do. I was taking pictures with my phone, and I'd go out with my daughter, and we'd go to the playground, and I would use Filmic Pro on my phone, and ended up actually switching my phone over to pro mode at one point on the camera and was messing with different things. So like I've been a photographer for a long time. For a while I would hashtag things photographer, FAUX. And it's just as a joke at that point, but looking back now in the last year, how much I've learned and how much I've actually been able to take over and do these things. Actually having a camera has been very helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I kind of want to know like what that process was like, as far as, so obviously you bought the camera because you were interested in the photography, but how quickly did that turn into trying to learn as much as you could? Because, I know some people just buy the camera thinking that the camera is going to be the answer. And then they quickly find out, oh, wait, it's not. There's more things that either I have to learn or buy. But it seems like with you caught on relatively quickly to that. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, where were you learning photography there in the beginning enough to just get you kind of to like this baseline? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does. And honestly, like the day I ordered my camera, the day before I had ordered my camera. So like I found this deal on eBay. It was like $330. I asked my wife how much I could spend, and she was like, well, you spend like $350. I was like, all right, cool. So I, went to searching and found this, and it was the one with like all of like the purple filters and all the stuff that like you're never going to use really. I think it had like a 32 gigabyte SD card that came with it. But it was one of those things like, I got the one that's had two lens, that had the kit lens, had the 18 to 55 and the 75 to 300. And the day I ordered it, or the day I decided I was going to order it, I was like, all right, cool. Let me get on my podcasts and find, photography. And I think this podcast was the first one that showed up that I actually like listened to. And I scrolled all the way back to episode 1.
Jeez.
And I was like, it was when you start getting into the exposure triangle. And one of the things was like, well, for the first month or two, I shot an aperture priority, and this is what I set, and this is how I, so I did that. And then I started looking at the settings that would come from that. So, I'd look at what the shutter speed would be set at and the ISO and all that. And, one day I was like, all right, I think I have enough of an understanding of it. Let's give it a shot. And I had my camera for about 3 or 4 weeks at that point. And, I had a lot of really bad, like underexposed, a lot of overexposed, blown out skies and, shadows that you had to bring way up and all that kind of stuff. And then, all of a sudden it just kind of clicked, and it was like, holy crap, I understand it now. You know, it's like math or science or chemistry or, you know, any of that kind of stuff where it just like none of it makes sense. Like then all of a sudden things just, oh, I got it. I understand it. I know what he's saying. And then, you know, I finally reached a point where, you know, I upgraded because that T6 wasn't going to give me what I needed in a low light environment. Like I would go out and shoot at night at the soccer fields under the lights, and try to take pictures of a practice. And I only had one lens that I could do it with, and it was the Nifty 50, you know, and even at 2.8, I was having to drop my shutter speed down to like 1/50th of a second because anything over 2000 ISO was just as noisy as could be. Mm-hmm. Looked like a TV from the 90s whenever you hit a channel that you didn't have. It was just static, basically. So, you know, I had some money come in, and I was like, all right, called my wife. I was like, I'm going to shoot, you know, we're shooting this wedding up in Michigan. You know, I think that was this past June, and it was, you know, in like March or April. And I was like, I'm going to go buy, I've been looking at a 6D because it has the articulating screen, simply because of that. Otherwise I would have gone with 5D, but it didn't have the articulating screen. And I was wanting to do some video stuff with it and all that. And I actually ended up, I called the local camera shop and I was like, hey, do you have a 6D Mark II? And he was like, no, we don't. And I left work. I was like, screw it. I'm going to ride in. And if they have it, they have it. And if they don't, then I've spent 15 minutes driving over here and, you know, a little bit out of the way. And I walked in, he was like, yeah, we got one. Who told you we didn't? And I was like, I don't remember. So he pulled one out of the drawer and I was like, do you guys have a battery grip? And he was like, yeah, we have some in the box. He was like, I think I actually have one that's open if you want it, and it'll be about half the price of a new one. And I was like, perfect, let's do that. And he ended up giving me a really good deal on it because I had been in there for 3 or 4 months, like it was in the case, and it was just like you know, like the angelic light shines down on it. And you hear the like the Halo music and all that. And so, you know, he had known I'd been in there looking at it, looking for one and waiting on it. Finally got the money to get it. And, you know, he was like, I'll do it for $1,000. And I was like, bet, say less, you know? And then at that point, I've got, let's see, my 75-300 and then my Nifty 50. And that was it. So we go for this wedding and had to rent, I rented a 24-70 and a 70-200. And at that point I went and shot a 3v3 tournament, Father's Day weekend of this year. And at that point it was like, all right, have to figure out how I'm going to get these lenses now. These are the lenses that I need, not want. I need them at this point because, you know, it was really a want more than a need. But if I get these, then I can really boost what I'm going to do. I can control my exposure from 70 millimeters to 200 millimeters because a 75-300 is a variable aperture. It's 4 to 5.6 or 4 to 6 or something. I don't remember exactly what it is, but like I'd have to set my ISO to auto, and then I'd get some pictures that were purple. White balance would be way
just because they were so grainy.
Yeah. And so I got this, and I mean, it just all of a sudden clicked even more, and I was like, all right, cool. Awesome. Even better. And ever since then, like I have not shot, like I have seniors and families and, you know, lifestyle and weddings and all that on my website because I will still offer them. I'll still do them. But like the passion is, I want to be behind the glass at a hockey rink. I want to be, you know, on the sidelines of a soccer game or a football game and, you know, take pictures of the action because there's always something going on. You don't have to fake a moment. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's no posing involved. And that's one of my weakest points with all of the other all the other stuff. So
next up, we got Ann Mangum. Here, Ann is going to share how she branched out into some paid advertising almost as a fluke, but it helped her find better clients, and how listening to what those clients said is leading to a new type of session that Ann is really enjoying. Once that started to happen, I kind of want to know now, how did you get to where you are today shooting families on the beach? Because, you know, you're there on the beach, you're very frustrated, you're photographing your own children, you're trying to figure this out. You start to get the hang of manual, and it's all starting to make sense. What happens next?
Well, okay. So I for a long time, I photographed a lot of people at my kids' school, families around my town. And I did that for a really long time. Well, I would say for a really long time, but I did that for a bit. And then I didn't do really any advertising. Most everything was word of mouth. But then I noticed like a lot of the other photographers in my area were photographing vacationers. And then I had always wanted to photograph vacationers, but I really wanted to photograph more like a day in the life, more candid photos, but I couldn't figure out how to get to that market. And so I just started thinking about how could I get to that market. And I had taken a class on business. I took a class on website design and marketing and things like that. And then at the very end of our class, she talked to us about Google marketing, put in an ad on Google. And so she said, just put $1 towards a Google ad and you can take it down right after the class. Well, I put $1 towards my Google ad and I just never took it down. And then as soon as I put the ad up, I started getting people from Google and vacationers the way I had set it up. So I was like, oh, I like this. And so I had actually photographed somebody that lives here, and then they told somebody else, and then they told somebody else, and I got like 5 people from that one lead. And I was like, oh, I really like photographing people from out of town. And then from there, with that combined with that Google ad, and then just people who live here, who have friends who travel here, I just started kind of doing more beach work and less work like props and cake smashes and the things that really weren't making me happy. And I really liked doing that kind of work. So I just put a little more money towards my Google ad and started kind of advertising a little more that way. And next thing I know, I would say, well, I wouldn't say the majority, 80% of my business is from Google ads, people traveling here. I get leads from the hotels, some of the rental companies now. And then I have a lady that I know who cleans, has her own cleaning service in some of the condos. And I get leads from that company as well. And that's the majority of what I do now.
That's so awesome to hear. I want to know more about the documentary stuff, right? Because you were really excited about that. And I know that you introduced like a day at the beach type session where it's less about portraits and it's more about documenting what it is that they do at the beach. How is that going? And is that fulfilling that desire that you had? Hey, Raymond here. Are you stuck in the comfort zone of shooting in auto mode? Well, then it's time for a change. When you download our free guide, Picture Perfect Camera Settings, you'll also get the key to understanding how to unlock the full potential of your camera. This guide isn't just about learning settings, it's about building confidence. It's designed to smoothly transition you from auto to manual mode, empowering you to take full control of your photography. This is the perfect resource if you are ready to step up your photography game and truly make each shot your own. Don't just dream about amazing photos, start creating them. Grab your free copy today at perfectcamerasettings.com and start your journey towards photography mastery.
I hope so. Starting in 2022, I have introduced something called a beach day session where people will come and we will go to the beach during the day. And I don't pose them at all. I just they just come to the beach and they just do whatever they want to do at the beach. And I've got a few booked for 2022 already. I'm offering them at a slight discount simply because it's new. And so I feel like I've got to get the word out. But it's perfect for, lots of families who come to the beach and maybe they've never been to the beach before, or they want to just capture their moments, like boogie boarding, or they're learning to surf, or maybe they just don't want to get dressed up, or maybe their kids don't want photos, but yet they love the water. So I'm just going to get in the water with them and take their photos. I'm going to if they want to sit in a circle and drink, I'm going to take those photos. Whatever they're doing at the beach is basically, I'm going to capture them and doing it and just having fun. And I think it takes a lot of pressure off having to pose, I think. And it takes the pressure off that whoever that person is in the family that usually documents those moments anyway. And then they can have a photographer there,
Of course. As the family photographer myself, it's very hard to be in a lot of the photos when I'm behind the camera. When you say that it's hard to, when it takes a lot of the pressure off of posing, do you mean on your part or on the family's part?
Both, actually. Like I actually had a family just recently who I thought would be a great candidate for something like that. I think also there are certain families who would be great at it, like people who have really 2 and 3 year old kids who don't want to sit still, and we're automatically drawn to the ocean when we see the ocean. So the first thing kids do when they get to the ocean is they go straight to the water. And so you've dressed your kids up. You're like, oh, we're going to have a photo session, but don't go to the water. But they've been to the water every day, except for the one day you're going to take photos. So it's such a mixed message. Like, don't get your hands wet. Don't get your hands wet. Don't get your feet wet. Don't play in the sand. But they've been playing in the sand the whole time. So someone who, as kids, just want to go near the water, it's perfect for them because then they don't have to get dressed up. They can be in their beach clothes. They can just splash around, and I can just take those pictures, and then mom and dad don't have to worry about yelling at the kids to say, get out, don't do that, don't get your dress wet, don't do that. And then it takes pressure off me because I'm not trying to de-stress everybody at the same time.
Of course, yeah. And all those children and trying to get everybody, that's got to be difficult. I know, shooting a lot of extended families, sometimes you'll have 10 plus people in front of the camera at once.
Yeah, it's usually the grandparents want photos with all their grandkids, and their grandkids might range from 16 down to 1 year old. And so then trying to get all of those grandkids to do something with grandmother, and grandmother is from a different generation where everyone sits still for the camera. But, the 1 year old is obviously not going to sit still. So it's just finding a happy medium to maybe tell grandmother to walk with the kids, and then we'll try to get one to sit still. And it's just, sometimes it's very difficult. And sometimes we just get what we get and we say we don't throw a fit, we just do the best we can.
Now here we got a clip from my interview with Stephen Overfield. Now he's going to share how he broke out of the rigidity that he was seeing in his work and what it was like using a studio for the first time. Super cool. I want to know, you said that, obviously you've been shooting for a number of years here. You went through some books. You watched YouTube videos trying to learn photography here. I want to know, was there anything that you learned or read and thought to yourself, that doesn't seem right, or something that you feel is maybe not correct when being taught photography?
Can't think anything particular. I know when I first started shooting, I was really kind of like a rule follower, I have to follow the rule of thirds. And then I tried to experiment with it. And I'm like, okay, maybe I can kind of break these rules and use it more, creatively. So yeah. I guess that's one thing can be emphasized too much, is trying to keep people in this box of what a photographer should be, and can kind of stifle your creativity. Why
do you think you broke out of that?
Because I was getting all of the same photos. It seemed too stale. And I'm like, I got to try to do something. This isn't nearly, when you first start taking photos, it's exciting. And you're like, oh, these are really cool. And then you take the same photo 100 times. And you're like, well, these are really stale.
Do you think that was something that, at the time, did you know, what composition was? Were you fully aware, I am shooting in the rule of thirds, this is the composition that I'm using? Or was it more organic than that?
I understood the idea of the rule of thirds. I read about it and saw where you should place your composition and kind of stuff like that. I don't know if I really grasped the idea of composition, I guess. I wasn't thinking this is my composition and this is how I'm going to take this photo. Uh-huh. but I kind of understood like what the rule of thirds was and how I should try to position someone.
So since then, I mean, have you been trying to learn about more compositions, or are you just like in camera kind of moving it around thinking, oh, that looks interesting. That looks interesting.
I've read about different compositions. I don't know if I quite grasp the idea of like, because I've read about like the different cross lines and all this kind of stuff. I kind of just try to, because I like when I'm shooting a client, I'm like focused on the client. So I'm like, okay, well, let's try this angle, and then let's try this angle, and let's move the camera here, try this angle, and kind of move it around. And then when I get it out of camera, I kind of try to remember where I was at and what I did. And like, okay, this worked, this didn't.
Yeah, smart. So you're like doing a full breakdown of your images after the fact.
Yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Has there ever been anything that you learned about yourself while going over your images after years now?
I still shoot way too much for a shoot. My last shoot, the client rented this studio in Cleveland, and we had 2 hours. Normally I do about an hour, but the studio suggested at least 2 hours to make sure you get everything done. I shot like 824 photos in 2 hours.
Jeez, wow.
So I'm like, okay, I need to dial back.
Oh my gosh, how many did you end up delivering?
I want to say it was like 200. There's lots of they had 2 or 3 little kids, so I was trying to do at least 3 of each place we had a little kid in to make sure I got them looking, or at least halfway looking. So that was part of it, but it was just like, okay, I need to dial back on these shutter clicks here.
Yeah, that can be really something for sure. Especially I remember times where it would be either I would feel uncomfortable in a situation, or when I say uncomfortable, I mean like maybe I would go to like photograph and think to myself, this isn't working. Like, I'm not sure why it's not working, but they're looking at me. Like, I don't know what to do in this situation. Yeah, I don't know how to fix this situation. So I'd almost just continue clicking, like taking more photos, hoping that it would appear as if like, oh, he knows what he's doing. He's clearly taking like a lot of photos here.
No,
do you think that there was any of that? What's that?
I can completely relate to that. No, in the last session, I just feel like there were so many people. I wanted to make sure I captured plenty of photos to deliver. And I guess maybe I went a little overboard.
Yeah. That's okay.
There was lots of different people, and they wanted different groupings, and there's just different places to put people. So I was trying to use as much of the studio as I could to get different photos, so all of their photos didn't look the same, because we would do a grouping and then more people would swap in and out. I'm like, okay, we're gonna get a lot of the same photos here. I don't want to get a lot of the same photos.
Right. Yeah. Was it a pretty big studio? I think I saw some of the behind the scenes. There was like a couch, and there was like some flower setups and things.
Yeah, it was relatively big. It wasn't quite as big as it looked like in a picture. It was a little narrow, but it was pretty long. So it was good. It was really cool. It was definitely a different experience.
Would you rent a studio again?
Oh, definitely. It was cool. It was nice because all of the light was really even. Although I still had, I think I was reading, somebody posted in the group about using a locked white balance instead of a auto white balance, which is what I normally shoot, which works out okay outdoors. But there was something weird in the lighting in the studio where a couple times I had a white balance shift, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to shift that white balance back to match the rest of the photos.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Did that take you quite a while when editing it?
No, not too much, because it was one specific scene. I don't know if it was the light that was coming in overhead and it was a different white balance. But it was only like one scene I really had to adjust the white balance in.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's one of those things that, like, I think as a hobbyist photographer, like when you just go out and you shoot every once in a while and you take a few photos, and what you're really looking at is like one photo at a time. That's really not that big of a deal. But when you have 200 photos that you're delivering in the same location, theoretically under the same light, I mean, those are the things that become more apparent for sure. Yeah. Next up, we got Karen Doughman. And let me tell you, traditional portraiture does not excite Karen. If you want to capture life as, as raw and as messy as it can be sometimes, you're going to love what Karen has to say here. I want to know, I guess before I get into this question, what is it today that you're photographing most?
Kids. So I have a 5-year-old grandson. I know, don't look like I should, but I do. And so I have a little project where I get him once a week, and every week we do something and I'm taking pictures. So last week it was the museum, and we went and we visited the dinosaurs, and he's really into dinosaurs. So I had one shot in mind, and I just wanted to get him looking up at the dinosaur. And that was the only shot with no other people. And it just so happened that everyone cleared out of the way. And I said, go look up at the dinosaur. And he did. And I got the shot. So I was really pleased with that. But I want to do kind of like a documentary style with him. So he's getting ready for school. So when he goes and he gets his hair cut for school, or when he learns to ride a bike, I want to be able to document those kinds of things. That's really exciting to me, to capture those moments and just to see and watch him grow. And I'd love to be able to do that with like members of the public too, a documentary lifestyle kind of session where you maybe stay with the family for like a year and you capture some of their really special but everyday moments, and just compile like that album, and so they can just see how their family grows. So to me, that would be really exciting. I'd like to see that. But I need to master the lighting first so I can walk into somebody's house and know how to shoot it. So I feel a little held back by my own lack of skill in that regard.
Do you dream of being a full-time photographer? Do you envision captioning moments that matter and having more family time? Well, suddenly reality hits and you got endless emails, tedious contracts, and manual payment tracking. But don't let the invisible tasks overwhelm you, because here comes CloudSpot Studio, a game changer for photographers. Breeze through organizing your shoots, sending professional contracts, questionnaires, invoices, and receive payments swiftly. Specifically designed for passionate photographers like yourself, CloudSpot Studio provides a hassle-free workflow without any hefty investments or uncertainties. CloudSpot Studio is included with your CloudSpot account, even for free forever users. What more could you want? Oh wait, if you sign up at deliverphotos.com, you will also get my exclusive wedding and portrait contracts and questionnaires at zero cost. That's just my little gift from me to you. So reclaim your cherished family time, balance work, life, and your passion effortlessly with CloudSpot Studio. Don't wait. Grab your free account at deliverphotos.com. But what better way to learn than trial by fire, right?
Yes.
Just get thrown into the situation and just start doing it. When you went to the museum with your grandson, it sounds like you had an idea of the photo that you wanted in your head. Do you typically do that before you go out and start shooting?
Yes. If I go and I don't have any ideas of what it is that I want the people to do, what poses that I want to achieve, then I'm like, okay, what are we going to do next? And then I shift the responsibility to the subject, and I should have that responsibility. And then I also get really super nervous. So that doesn't help me at all. So I do research different poses. I don't have it all intuitively yet. So I'll go into Pinterest, or I'll go into Instagram, or I have an app that I use, and I'll look for poses that I think will work for what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. And I'll screenshot them, and then I'll actually show my subject, because that's another skill, is like explaining how to pose and to mirror the pose. So if I say, raise your right hand, I'm raising my right hand, they raise their left hand, and it's not working. So I haven't quite learned how to mirror it yet. It's a different part of the brain that needs to activate, and mine's not there yet. So yeah, I have to have something in mind. Otherwise I just go blank and I get super nervous.
So how do you intend on doing more of these documentary sessions?
Yeah, I know it seems counterintuitive, right? Just based on what I said. But when I'm following different people on Instagram who are doing the lifestyle photo sessions, there are certain key angles and key groupings that come up. So it's like, okay, so even though it's not technically posed, there are certain things that are repetitive that I see keep coming up that look good, that show that connection and that emotion with the family members. And it's like, okay, so I could have those. Those are my go-to ones. And then what happens, capturing what they do, and kind of be fluid with that, which is really, it's really outside my comfort zone, because you've heard me talk about teaching and it's like very structured. So to kind of let go and just release and see what happens, that is very uncomfortable for me. But I think that creates the best images. So that's what I'd like to push myself to do.
Why do you think that those images are better than the alternative?
Well, I mean, there's a place for staged images, like your JCPenney shots. There's a place for that. Grandma loves that shot. I think all families love at least one shot like that, where everyone's looking at the camera and they want that to hang on the wall. But there's not a lot of emotion or memory attached to that. It's just, we went to JCPenney and had our pictures done. But when the kids are rolling around in the backyard in the mud pit and they're laughing and having a great time, yes, they're messy and it's not staged, but there's so much emotion into it. And you can look back on that photo 10 years from now and you're like, I remember when they did that and it was great. And that's what I want. I want those stories that the pictures recall to your mind. Those are the images that I want to be able to take and have people hang on their wall.
What do you think you need, skill-wise, knowledge-wise, portfolio-wise, whatever, to be able to do one of these sessions, to feel comfortable to do one of these sessions?
I think it goes back to the use of light. I see amazing photos where somebody will go into a room and it'll be like these forest green walls, and they'll have a beam of light coming down, and they'll like move all the furniture out of the way so that they can use that beam of light. I think I'm still at the stage where I'll walk into that forest green room and I'll be like, oh no, this is too dark. I can't do it. And I want to get beyond that. I want to get beyond like the initial reaction to really see like, I can take control of the setting. I can move the furniture and take advantage of that light that's hitting the wall right behind the couch. Let's just pull the couch out of the way. That takes a certain boldness to go into somebody's house and to say, hey, let's move the furniture. And so I can do that with friends. I don't know that I can do that yet with strangers. So there's my comfort level that I need to just get past, and just have that confidence and project it and say, no, I can do this. So there's a couple of different things that are going on there that are kind of holding me back. But I think if I just practice, then I'll be able to do it. I just need the practice. Yeah.
Where are you going to get that practice from?
I know I need to harass my friends more. Yeah, that's what it is. I just need to say, hey, let me come into your house and let me document what's going on. And hopefully they'll let me.
It's too funny. Yeah. No, they should, right? I mean, if a friend came to me and offered to do that, I would say, absolutely. Yes. Let's do this. Let's see what happens, because worst case, I don't know, it doesn't turn out and you just don't have to, I don't know, I guess share the photos or whatever, but there's so much more upside than there is potential downside. So I think that they will say yes. And if they don't, well, then they're not really friends of yours. You just send them a strongly worded email afterwards. Now, this next one comes from an interview that seemed to resonate with quite a bit of you. This is from my interview with Tyi Reddick. Now, Tyi did not have a traditional path into photography, but let me tell you, when he found photography, it kind of changed his life. So he talks a bit about that, and then the trepidation of picking up his camera and learning exactly what all of those buttons and knobs actually do. You originally bought it for one purpose, to help others communicate with their loved ones. What was it about opening the camera? Like, what was it that got you from there to, I'm going to stick this phone down a sewer and take a photo of what's inside? That seems like a bit of a leap there.
A lot of my life now like relates to recovery. So I, just the other day, February 27th, I got 4 years clean and sober. And so a lot of the groups that I'm a part of, I tell them like, I'm a 4-year-old right now. Like I can pay my taxes. Yes, I can figure out how to use HoneyBook. Yes, I can do all these things. Thank you, Raymond, for the recommendation on CloudSpot, because it's been a game changer. Like all of these things, like, I can figure out, but what I was never able to figure out before was the basics, like how to operate in a world where everybody else is constantly moving. And so with my camera, everything was new. Like everything that I looked at, the skyscrapers of downtown that I have a wonderful view of right here, the leaves on the ground, for someone who was 37 years old, I had never appreciated the simple things. I didn't, the sky being blue. I spent a lot of years, locked in a basement doing all sorts of horrible things. And so looking up for the first time versus looking down was like this new experience. So yes, when I saw sewers, I was just like, what's down there? Let me be a 4-year-old and stick my, sharp knife in an electrical socket and find out what happened.
Wow. So, but you had to have, okay, so hold on. Let me try to wrap my head around this. This is really interesting. I did not come from a similar place in photography where it just kind of felt more of like an extension, I suppose, to who I was when I was actively trying to learn. So for you, was the biggest thing the excitement? It was just the newness of it all that kept you going despite. Did you know that you were taking bad photos at the time, or is this now, one of those hindsight type things?
Oh, I knew I was taking terrible photos at the time, but they were the coolest thing ever for me.
Okay. What was it that kept you going? Was it that curiosity, or was it something else? Was it something specifically about photography?
I think it was the opportunity to do something for myself. It was no one else could take the picture for me. No one else could walk the streets and see the things that I could see. I could take friends with me, but like every experience I had with my camera in my hand was just new to me. Mm-hmm. And I was driven more and more and more to capture different things. And, I upgraded to the T3i and the 6D, and I did that photo walk for, a year of different topics and everything. But like, everything about it, whether it be taking pictures of, the judicial building downtown, was like, cool. I like that I got up on the 6th floor of this parking garage to go take that photo. I like what it looks like when I go edit it. How do I duplicate that? How do I do that again? How do I keep going? I love seeing people on 16th Street Mall. And, I was obsessed with it, for a while with these, street portraits and stuff. And it's been a phase. I go through phases about everything. But it was always like, what can I see next? What can I do next? And there are certain things, yes, that are etched into my mind, like seeing my father, in tears, which I wish now there was a way to capture that in a photo and have it available, because like that emotional moment sparked something for me. And when I got the camera, I needed an outlet. I needed something new to replace all of my bad habits that I had had for so long. And now that I had this new habit, it was like, I can do anything I want to with it, and it doesn't hurt anybody. Like, it's free, sort of. Obviously I have gas. I have horrible gas. Like, that's a whole other topic. But like, photography to me is free. And it's something that, yes, I can etch it in my brain. And yes, when I see a picture that I've made, I'm drawn right back to that moment. Like every detail and smell and the lighting, but photography for me is something that I get to do that is not destructive, is, beautiful in so many ways. And it's authentic. I get to capture the reality of what I see, and I might edit it like crazy. I might screw it all up, for Lightroom, but in that moment on the back of my screen, when I look at what I've captured, like I get the authenticity of that moment. And I love that photography in general was a gift that I found.
Wow. That's very powerful. So I want to know now about getting deeper into photography, because I'm sure that we can all think of a million people who, take photos with their phone and then that's it. That's good enough for them. You got that T3i. I'm sure that there was a technical hurdle to get over compared to a single button on a phone. Tell me what that journey was like. Did you start off in auto? Did you go straight to manual? What did you do?
When I first got it, I didn't touch it.
Why?
Because I'm slow to adapt at times. And I saw the camera as, this blessing, like, cool, there's a real camera now that I can use, but it terrified me. Mm-hmm. I was just like, there's buttons on here that I don't know what they are. Like, you look at the Google Pixel and it's complicated, but it's still simple. It's like, oh, touch the screen, you can make it brighter or darker. I didn't know what ISO and aperture were,
sure,
at that time. So looking at the camera, I was just like, what am I supposed to do with this? So it took me a minute to do it. But then when I picked it up one day, I don't remember exactly what the situation was, but I did pick it up and I was like, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to try. And I went out and, the first 50 photos I took, on my little 8 gigabyte memory card, I think that my mom handed me in her case, they were blown out. They were all JPEG. They were all blown out. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I did the usual YouTube search. I looked on the internet, and to be honest, I say this a lot, and I think it's something that I have to say out loud for myself is you can watch all of this. You can watch these videos. You can listen to everybody else, but you need to go out and go figure it out. So I did. And I would just start messing with buttons. And I did shoot on auto initially, but I remember even before I got into photography that manual was something that people talked about. They're like, shoot in manual. And I was like, does that mean your lens? Do you change the manual on the lens as you go along? And I was like, that doesn't feel right. It goes out of focus and then it goes back into focus when I hit my button. So why is it not working for me? And so that was, irritating at first, but then as I started to mess with the knobs and, find out, if I open up my aperture, it gets really bright all of a sudden. And I still didn't know at the time, focus points and stuff like that. So I just hold my camera up and take a picture and I'm like, it's bright. And my ISO is at 800 and it's broad daylight and my photos are still blown out. So there was a lot of twisting and turning and learning.
This next clip is from my interview with Riaan Koekemoer. Now, Adrian had a great kit. Full frame camera, lots of lenses, all the kit. And he still wasn't happy with his photos. So what did he do? He got rid of it all and he became a better photographer. Let's talk about your move from Nikon to Fuji. Why did you decide to purchase a Fuji camera?
At one stage, I felt like I was moving away from the essence of photography for me at this stage, and that is to learn photography as an art. I was busy turning into a gear hawk. I was buying all the gear, expensive stuff, and I wasn't making really any progress. Mm-hmm. So then one day I just decided I'm going to sell all my Nikon stuff and I'm going to buy this Fuji X100V and basically start from the beginning, learn all there is to learn about composure, learn all that there is to learn about lighting. And once I have those basics in place, then maybe I'll start investing in more expensive gear. I might go back to Nikon one day, but not at this stage.
So does that mean that you have found right now what it was that you were looking for just by shooting Fuji?
Yes, more or less. I think now I'm more focused on composition and lighting than I was before. For instance, you have a flower. The flower looks nice, but now you need to wait for the right time of day. You need to think about composition, but just in a smaller scale. I mean, leading lines, abstracts, S-curves, all those things still apply. So it forces you to focus more on the art side of photography rather than the tech side.
When it comes to those compositions, you said that you are focusing on more now, focusing on composition and light. If you look back at some of your earliest photos, where do you think it was lacking most in terms of composition? Or I guess, how do you feel like you've progressed most through composition to where you are today? I don't know if that was a good question or a terrible question. I'm going to hope that you can pull something out of that.
Yeah, like I said, it was easy to take a picture of let's step away from the example of a lion and use a giraffe this time. To put that giraffe on the rule of thirds, the head in the 1/3, body in the rest, create some negative space, positive space, all that in post. Now you actually have to walk closer or further away to get to the composition that you want. So in terms of thinking before you push the shutter button, that was the big improvement for me. Is just thinking about the picture before you actually.
Do you think that before you just weren't thinking about the photo before you took it, or where was that biggest disconnect?
Yeah, I think, like I said, the biggest issue was that you started to over-rely on the gear. You started to think more about the tech than the actual art. You started to rely on the tech to make the picture. You didn't trust yourself. You didn't make the decision. You didn't pre-plan before you made the picture. And I think that is the big paradigm shift that happened for me from switching from Nikon to Fujifilm.
Where does that idea even come into your ecosystem? Because I know that there are plenty of people who are more than happy to just have, for all intents and purposes, great gear, and that is enough for them. Where did you think that your photos were lacking that made you think, I have to dig deeper? I have to find the artistic side of photography and explore that?
Yeah, it actually came by the way of classical Dutch painting and artists. I started gaining an interest in my heritage because I'm Dutch. I'm from a Dutch background. Started looking at guys like Vermeer. I saw that these guys were following certain rules, and that the rules were kind of constant. Then I started looking into stuff like root angle, root squares, the golden triangle or circle, whatever you want to call it, the Fibonacci sequence, how that applies to art. So I started developing an interest in that. And I said, okay, if I want to study that, or I really want to make a study of that, then I maybe need to downscale on the equipment and focus on that first.
Do you feel like you had to relearn everything in photography and just start over, or did you feel like it was more of just a course correction?
Yeah, I think it was more of a course correction. The exposure triangle remains the exposure triangle. Aperture priority and shutter speed priority remains the same thing. It's just that your perspective changes a little bit from the technical side to the more artistic, focus solely on art side. Wait for the right lighting. Don't press the shutter just to get the picture. If you miss the shot, so what? There's always a next time.
Now, this one is from my interview with Vicky Wilde. So up until this point in this clip, Vicky had been saying how much she wanted to make photography work for her as a business and bring in some additional income for her family, but she was just terrified to start. So that is what we tackle in this clip. Now, before this interview, I asked a few questions just to prepare. Mm-hmm. And I asked, what is your biggest struggle in photography? And you said, myself. You said yourself. Now, you also said there that you've mentioned that you run marathons and that you train and stuff. Mm-hmm. What does failure look like? I mean, do you have to come in first place to win a marathon?
No.
Okay, so
there's no chance.
So let me ask, how are you judging how well you do at a marathon?
By my last marathon.
Okay, so you have to keep doing better than before, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's my goal.
Okay. So looking at your photos from earlier this year, have you noticed an improvement in your images?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
So you're winning.
I'm
right?
already progressing. Yeah.
You're already progressing. This is great. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
In just a few minutes, we've established that you're already progressing as a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask, if you say, I don't know anything about marathons. Could you give me a like a time? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I want to try and go for 3 hours, 30 minutes, which is kind of quick.
Wow.
It's about an 8-minute mile for 26 miles.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I ran a 10-minute mile once. So yeah, I can, that is very impressive. Okay. So let's say that your next marathon, you run 3 hours and 45 minutes. Is it a complete failure?
No.
Will you ever run a marathon again if you get that time?
Yeah, because I would get good grade and then I could, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I'm really trying to get into like motivational mode here for you. So let's say you post in your group, right? In your the family group on the base there, if anybody would like photos, and you do a session. What is something that you could do, because you obviously prepare for marathons? What is something that you could do to prepare for that session to turn out well?
Well, just make sure that the weather's going to be okay and that they kind of understand what to expect. And I just get a rapport with them and find out what kind of people they are. If they're bringing kids, what are the kids into, so that you can say to the kids, oh, hey, like, what does Spider-Man do? Or like, who's your favorite superhero? And then just build that rapport with them and go from there.
That's like 90% of photography right there. Like, you got it. Like, if you can just do that, you're 90% of the way there. The photos are the last 10%. It is all about that experience. And it sounds like you already know exactly what to do. So the next step is
just doing it.
All right. Wow. That sounds good to me. I didn't know where you were going to go with that. Yeah, that was good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. We established that. Awesome. Okay. I'm going to start asking some easier questions now here. I promise. I'm not going to put the what is it? The fire to the, no, not fire to the flame. Your feet to the fire. I'm not going to put your feet to the fire. Okay. Let's get back to photos of yours. I want to know, do you have a favorite photo of yours that you have taken?
I kind of like the ones of the strip at night. I've done a few panoramics of those, and they're pretty impressive. I like that. Obviously, the ones of my kids. I love all the ones of my kids. The picture that you've got with Charlotte in the sunflowers, that's pretty. I like that one. I think I took that in like the first 4 or 5 months of doing photography.
Wow. Okay. So thinking about some of your favorite photos here, are there any themes that you think kind of flow together between them?
Like I say, I just like kind of organic ones of the kids playing. So some of them are better than others. Like, I don't have a mind's eye. So, I'm not very good at kind of imagining a picture beforehand, but if I could see the kids doing something, I'll be like, oh, that looked really great. And like my son, was playing with pool noodles one day, and it was like kind of crossing them across like this. And I got a really cool picture of the pool noodle kind of bending background, and the other one too. And then his face was in the middle. And it's just stuff like that I just think are pretty cool, where it's natural stuff. They're not posing and they're having fun, and you can just see they've got this big beaming smile on their face.
Yeah. I like that. So again, we're getting back to kind of those authentic moments of life, right?
Yeah. Like, I think it's really cool for those people that do like documentary photography and they follow a family around for a day. Like, I think that'd be something really cool to get into. Yeah, I know. That's a difficult thing, I think, to get into from a business perspective. But I've always thought the same thing. It would be so cool to follow, a band on tour, or a team going to the World Series. Which this year it's definitely going to be the Dodgers. Let's be honest. So that's like really exciting stuff. So I fully understand, being able to follow a family. That would be cool. Have you ever tried just like following? I know this is going to sound like a dumb question, but like following your family, like with intention, like for a day or a project or an event or something like that. Have you tried something like that? No. I probably could, should, but I try to kind of be mindful that I'm their mum too, and they want to kind of experience the things that they're doing with me.
Yes.
Not just have me with a camera in their face all the time. So I try to kind of only do 5 or 10 minutes of taking pictures and then interact with them.
Yeah, I fully understand. It's a very fine line to deal with that. Yeah, I totally get that, especially when kids start to get tired. Next up, we got Chris Britton. Chris is, he's a father, and he really wants to elevate his family photos. He doesn't just want to take snapshots. So here we talk about what those elements that he needs are, right? Moment, composition, and post-processing, and the struggles that he has with them. I want to know when you go to take a photo, especially with kids, moment is a very important thing, right? It is. In fact, I remember your photos that you posted in the group. You said, I always love a good action shot. Kids jumping off of the, I believe, the bow of a boat.
Right.
For you, what is it moment that is the most important element for an image for you? Or what's the balance between moment and technical?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think the technical, when we're talking about things, I guess I'd like to clarify, like the technical for me in that instance is like the right shutter speed, the right aperture, and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Those are important because it helps to make sure that the story can be told, right? If something that's blurry isn't supposed to be blurry or whatever, that can kind of confuse the story a little bit. So having but I think there's that aspect. You got to have that part good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect for the moment. But then I think most importantly, that is the moment and the lighting and the atmosphere. And then I would say the composition of it is probably the most important, of kind of telling that story of what's happening. Like I think the photo you're referring to is, I think, one of my kids jumping off the bow of a boat. And so like making sure I had and that was probably, I took a bunch of these, but like making sure I had the boat in it and making sure that the kid was far enough off the boat, like trying to position the camera so it made it look like there was some distance between them and the boat, not just like, it's not quite as a compelling shot if their feet are only, like, in my opinion, like an inch or two off the boat. I mean, It kind of tells the story, but kind of those compositional elements were, for me, more important. Mm-hmm. I think it's all those things that kind of come together.
Did that take a while for you to put together, or in your head were you like, I already know the shot I want?
That one I knew the shot I wanted. It was just kind of positioning myself somewhere on the boat that I could get it, and then getting my kids to do multiple rounds of jumping so I could dial in the technical details.
Yeah, that can always be difficult. However, I've never really had a tough time getting kids to jump off of things. I have a hard time getting them to not jump off of things, actually, more so. But
yes, I know how that goes too. Yeah,
I really want to know more about your relationship with post-processing, because that seems like something that you've had some challenges with recently within the group. So tell me kind of what is that relationship with post-processing like?
Well, it's like it's a love-hate relationship, because I shoot in RAW and the pictures just look really flat. Otherwise you do something with them. And then it's like, I take like probably, I don't know if this is a thing, but I take a ton of pictures. I would say way too many pictures, but I don't know. Is there a thing as too many pictures? I'm not sure. But from a processing standpoint, it can be a little overwhelming. Like, which one do I edit? Taking that time to edit the picture. So that's a challenge right there. It's just dealing with the sheer volume of photos. And I have like I take any pictures I take on my DSLR, I put them in Lightroom. Any pictures that I take on my phone are automatically imported in Lightroom. So, I mean, it's just pictures flowing in all the time. So there's that. I think it's trying to determine what, I think as I've kind of dabbled a little bit, in like family portraiture and, contract work kind of thing, it's kind of developing a consistent look that's true to me, but also so that the people who would hire me know what to expect. And so kind of trying to define that. And so define what kind of look I'm going for. And I think that's really kind of a challenge. Something I've been really wrestling with is like, I want something that looks genuine. I'm not, there's a lot of work that's being done. And it's really great work. It's just not for me, but there's a lot of stuff that's like, kind of has this like overarching orangey, earthy tone tint. That's kind of a thing right now. And you know, if anyone's listening and does that, like that's, I mean, I admire that work.
Right.
It's just not, it just doesn't speak to my style.
Same.
But try to find something but what I like about that is it evokes this warm kind of nostalgic feeling. So I'm trying to find something that like marries that kind of warm, nostalgic connection feeling with something that's a little bit, my style is a little bit more probably contrast, like higher contrast, vibrant colors. So kind of true to life while still having that kind of unique kind of warmth to that some of those kind of, I don't know if it's vintage or earthy tone pictures tend to have.
Sure. Well, I feel like this is going to sound ridiculous, but I feel like everybody's preferences when it comes to their own visual literacy happen when they are children, like when they're kids. I find it, I don't really think that people change their opinions too much later in life, like completely. Like I don't feel like they're formed later in life. I feel like they're formed as a child and then we grow into it. So that idea of like that vintage look, I don't think is necessarily vintage. That's just what you knew, you know, probably as a child. So probably the photos that you are thinking of were warmer, you know, because there's always two different film stocks, you know, there's indoor and then outdoor. So if you're shooting outdoors, they're going to be warm. They're going to, you know, have those warm tones. And if you're shooting, you know, those same stocks indoors, then everything is orange and very warm, like overly warm. And I think that that's where a lot of that comes from. I would encourage you to, if I'm understanding you correctly, I would encourage you to probably look up some YouTube tutorials on obviously the color panel within Lightroom, right? So you can add specific colors just in shadows and just in highlights. I would encourage you to check that out because with having a lot of contrast in your images, you're going to have a lot of there's going to be a lot more areas of darkness because there's a lot of contrast. And if you can insert, you know, warm tones into the shadows, even just a bit, I think can get you a lot closer to where you're looking to go. And if not, then completely forget about what I said. But at least now you're going to know one more thing about Lightroom. That's funny. Next up, we got a clip from my interview with Zenia, who shoots concerts. She loves concerts, but is now starting to branch out and is also going to bring her experience in shooting concerts with her. So let me ask, obviously you've shot quite a few concerts up to this point. I know that concert photography is one of those things that I think sounds pretty cool. And I can think of some of my favorite bands that I would love to like go photograph. Yeah. If you had to start over, how would you get into concert photography? Would you do it the same way that you did, or would you try something new?
No, actually, I feel really blessed that I was able to do it the way I did. I do have like folks, you know, like ask me like, how can I do this? How do I get into it? And I think basically, photograph anything and everything. Like, it's really hard to get a photo pass if you don't have a portfolio. So it's kind of like you got to build your way up. And luckily I was able to start up here. And then after I started taking photos at bigger venues, I would still go to like the smaller venues just to get everything and anyone. Even actually one of the bands that I photographed years ago, they just sold out at Red Rocks for 2 nights. And at that point, when I photographed them, they were like in a basement here in Montana. So yeah, it's an interesting journey. And I don't think that there's like a set way of like getting into it. It's not like, you know, you have to go to school or do, you know, this. It's basically whichever road leads you there. And I think everyone wants to be in or a different part of music photography. Like no one likes the same music, but I photograph, I guess, I don't even care about.
You just love being there. You love the energy.
I just love being there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know I would like this band, or just my favorite part is like the interaction, like the fans and the band, like the hardcore fans that are like, oh my God, like I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Oh, really? What do you mean by that? So like you interacting with them or their interaction?
Yeah. So when you're like at the photo pit before the show, you only get 3 songs. So you're up there, waiting for the band, and then, the fans are there and they're like, hey, what are you shooting for? That kind of stuff. And just getting stories of like why they love the band, how they started listening to them. It's a good way to learn about a band that I know nothing about.
Wow, that is cool. That is very cool. I bet you get to meet some obviously very passionate people. If it's
very
like
passionate people, yeah.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah.
I want to ask you about something earlier. You said to get a photo pass, it can be difficult, and that you need like a portfolio to show. How do you get a photo pass? Like, are you reaching out to the venue? Are you reaching out to the band?
There's different avenues you could take. Initially, I was reaching out to the band. So the band that was, shooting for. And once I had, enough material to show, reach out to like local venues and say, hey, do you need an extra shooter for, just like the house photographer's out, or just, hey, can I photograph this? And a lot of the smaller venues are honestly like, please, we need, promo photos. So can you do this?
Wow.
And then there's the avenue of like music magazines. There's a lot of those now that like are very tiny music magazines, and you could request to shoot for them, but you normally have to write like a review, and I'm not really into
that. Like of the band or of the concert?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I would imagine that because of the internet, there's probably more bands than ever. They're probably not as big as before, but there's probably more bands than ever. And
there's a lot of bands.
Yeah, which would mean that there's probably more concerts than ever as well in small venues. So that makes sense.
Yep,
so
smaller venues.
Reaching out to those small venues, right? You said that they need some promo photos. So when you go to show up for a concert, do you try to take other more promotional style photos of like the inside, the outside, so that you can help them out, or how does that work?
Not really anymore. Just kind of, tagging the venue is a good way to get your name out there. But yeah, just mostly I just do the bands now. But yeah, if you get the opportunity to shoot at a bigger venue, then, tagging the venue and like, hey, here's a photo and you're welcome to use it for, promotional purposes. Just, photo credit me, and that's kind of a good way to get your name out there.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned earlier that you're thinking about focusing more on family portraiture as well, right?
Yes. I'm trying.
So why?
I've done a few. Actually, I've done it every weekend for like the past 3 weekends now, just family portraits. And I did a wedding, or I've done a few weddings, but those terrify me.
Why?
I don't know how you do it.
Why do they terrify you?
The whole thing where everything needs to be perfect kind of thing. It seems kind of scary, and it's a very like emotional time in someone's life. So I could see how they could be kind of, touchy about everything. And so yeah, I did a wedding this summer, and it turned out okay, but I just pictured instruments in their hands. That's what I did. I was like, okay, I can do this.
You're like, okay, this is a concert today. This is the most dressed up concert.
This is what we're doing. Yeah.
I really want to say, first and foremost, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast, because, let's be honest, there is no shortage of photography podcasts out there. And the fact that you keep tuning in each week just lets me know that I'm on the right track. And the right track is to help you, right? It's to give you the information and the tools that you need to become the photographer that you want to be. So when you listen, I know that you are taking away lessons that you can then apply to your own work. But like Tyi said, you can read all the blogs, you can watch all the videos, you can listen to all the podcasts. But if you don't do anything with it, it's all for nothing. So today, I want to challenge you to just grab your camera, pick it up with no expectations. Look around you, and then when you see something that, even interests you just 1%, I want you to dive in and I want you to capture it, because that voice that is telling you, something is interesting about that, will always guide you in the right direction. So recap for today's episode. 1, join the Facebook group and be a part of the most helpful community of photographers just like you by heading over to beginnerphotopod.com/group. And then grab your camera, photograph something that means something to you today, and then share that in the group. So that is it for today. Remember, the more that you shoot today, the better you will be tomorrow. Get shooting. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.